say, okay, I have a lot of money, but you have no money unless you take profits.
When the first ever spot ETF was created for gold 10x.
And the only thing I really knew was Bitcoin at the time, so I just invested very heavily into that. Rode it all the way up.
What's up?
My name is Jeff. Even the creators have said it's going to be the predecessor of CBDC.
What that taught me was that I need to be self-sufficient.
A solid DCA investment strategy, and pretend the red sell button doesn't even exist.
We about to go up like.
Ladies and gentlemen, and degenerates of all ages, welcome to the first official book club presented by the Degen Roundtable. I am Zenith, and I am joined by the finest degenerates that I could find this side of the Atlantic Ocean. And with that said, I'm going to pass it over to my co-host, Jay. Jay, how you doing, buddy?
Dude, I am doing fantastic. Thank you for asking. And bro, thanks for throwing this idea and this thing together, because I think it's pretty obvious that a lot of the books that you recommend and that we're thinking about going over, a lot of us have read several times through, and this is definitely something that I'm looking forward to, bro. So thanks for doing this, and I'm glad to be part of it, man.
Absolutely. It's no surprise that a lot of the books that we're going to be recommending on the book club are a lot of books that are probably pretty well traveled in circles, especially in self-improvement, finance, and the cryptocurrency world. So we're starting off with Rich Dad, Poor Dad because it is one of the most popular and well-known books in the sphere. It specifically talks about how you can leverage all your assets and refigure your mind to learn how to work for yourself instead of working for the man. So with that said, I want to ask our fine panel as they introduce themselves, what does this book mean to you, and who told you about it originally? So with that said, Will, brother, how we doing? Give him a sec. Our man is figuring out life and trying not to die in St. Louis.
I thought he was just trying to. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Okay. All right, sweet. Yeah, I'm just trying not to die in this fucking rainstorm going on over here. But anyways, I was saying I found out about Rich Dad Poor Dad kind of like the same way that advertising works. Is I had heard about it a whole bunch of times. Then like a person that I trusted talked about it, and I was like, you know what? It's about fucking time I read this. So I'd heard about it mentioned a whole bunch on Fresh and Fit, and then I watched a stream that Rollo Tomasi did with Robert Kiyosaki and Justin Waller, and I was like, okay, I gotta listen to what this guy's talking about and read his fucking book. And so I finally bought it on Audible and listened to it a whole bunch of times over. I was actually listening to it earlier today because it's been a fucking while, so it's kind of sort of fresh on the mind. But yeah, that's where I had found it, and that's what was the other part of the question?
What it means to you and who turned you on to it?
Oh fuck, it's a good ass book. Sets a good foundation. It doesn't really give you a whole bunch of like specific steps, but it points you in the right direction, and basically it's just like fire and forget from that point. But that's what it means to me, and that's where I learned about it from.
Perfect. Yeah, one of the things that Robert talks about with the book is he says it's not exactly going to be a technical manual for how to do things, but it's more of an inspiration to get people going in the right direction. Excellent. With that said, we have an additional member. Nate, how we doing, buddy?
Doing all right. How are you, man?
In there, brother. I've been traveling a lot, so I'm glad to actually like have my feet planted and getting projects going again.
Let's go. All right, awesome. Yeah, well, originally when I was like, I can't be poor anymore, right? And I was straight up was like, I mean, my whole family, grandparents, everything, right, is just like not a lot of money. And I'm just like, I can't do this anymore. You know, I grew up in a 100-year-old farmhouse all my life, lived with insects and rats and stuff out on the farm, and so I was like, I just can't do this anymore. I need to be able to retire earlier, right? Earlier than 60. And so I was like, okay, what am I going to do? And I started just looking up how to get rich, right? And books that are going to help me out with that. And I got two books. I got The Art of the Deal and then Rich Dad Poor Dad. And Art of the Deals, I started with that one, and then that was a fun one, right? But then I immediately moved on over into Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that one right there, I would say, was truly like one of the better. Like Art of the Deal, like he's got some stuff in there, but it seems like a lot of bragging. You know, I did this, yay. Whereas Rich Dad Poor Dad, it was really quite awesome because I'm like, okay, there's like actionable things that he's doing here, and especially like that first chapter, the whole him as a kid type of deal. That was a lot of fun. You know, I had a lot of fun and kind of hooked me right away right there. So I was like, okay, so yeah, here we go. This is going to be a good one. But yeah, there's a lot of good things about it. That's what started me off, man. When I first read it, what was I? I was like 19, 20, somewhere in there. That was a whole decade ago, man. But yeah, in listening to it again, I got a lot of nostalgia because I was just thinking back of the original time when I first started this journey of mine, right? And all the ideas I had and like how I could do things. And then I was able to like kind of go back over my life and be like, okay, so what did I do right? What did I do wrong? Based on kind of like the book and what it was I was trying to do, you know. So this has been a lot of fun. Thanks for putting this on, Zenith.
Absolutely. This has been something I wanted to do for a long time. And the point that you mentioned, the very first chapter where Robert asks his dad about how to make money, he says, I don't know, just go do it. So he and his buddy go in the front yard and melt down tin cans to recast coins. It's like, you're literally correct. However, as Robert says in the book, yeah, don't do that. That's not what he meant.
My man was making nickels. Plaster of Paris,
Absolutely.
bro.
Hey, if it works, it works.
Love that.
I was dying.
I mean, it literally, you know, you got to think though, he had it correct. It's like, oh, how can I make money? And he literally had the thought, okay, let's make money. I loved it.
For sure. Alrighty. We have one more person on our panel for today. You probably don't see her around too much. However, she is very important to our team. And she has a lot to say on this book. Our resident book enthusiast, Miss Magetta, how you doing? What would you like to officially go by on the stream?
Mrs. Magetta is fine.
Got it.
Alrighty, give me 1 second here.
We are doing it live for the first time. This is my first time hosting, so I knew that something was going to go wrong. So far, Will almost timed out. We're losing stuff, but tell you what, we're going to do this live, so we'll figure it out. Don't even worry for a second.
Yeah,
Figuring it the fuck out while that's getting sorted and whatnot. I wanted to say the thing that stuck out to me the most about that little story with the making of money and everything is that they had fucking lead toothpaste tubes. And it's just like they're just consuming lead like it's cool, you know, putting it and brushing it all over their teeth. You know, holy shit, this guy's fucking slow. Sorry about that. We are doing it live. I'm almost getting run over by freaking semis and shit. But that's dude, how cool would that be if I get like, you know, impaled by a whole bunch of rebar or some shit falling off a truck, like while we're live on stream and you guys get to like, we'll probably get kicked off YouTube, I guess.
Shit.
Bro, that'll be
What a terrible way for the DGen Roundtable to end is just like me dying. I'll do my very best not to die on stream, guys. But anyways, like I was saying about the lead toothpaste tubes and shit, that was the thing that stuck them out to me the most about that little story. Just fucking nuts.
Yeah,
people were made of
cool
different things back in the
was.
day.
Yeah. Hey
I
man,
think we are ready over here. Can you guys hear me?
you know that thing about lead?
Absolutely.
Really abrasive.
All right, cool. Okay, so then for me, I wanted to join in on the book club because I am a big book reader. For this particular one, I listened to it initially back when Nate introduced me to it about, 9-10 years ago now. And I just gave it a re-listen today. The concepts in this book to me are very, very important, just ideals for life. If you want to figure out how to, like live and actually live and not be a slave to the system for the rest of forever. We keep bouncing around here. I'm sorry about that, guys. I'm not sure why that's happening, but it's just, bear with us. So for me, one of the most important parts of the whole concepts here is my family growing up, we bounced around a lot. Moved house to house. Like, I swear we probably lived in like 30 different places because we just never had stability. So my mom was always poor and she got disability money. So we never really had like a firm grounding. And I didn't really get to learn about any of this stuff because everything was always just so chaotic that it just was very much at the bottom of the like important scale. So this book helped me a lot to start realizing that a job is not your entire being. It's just a job, and you as the individual person are far more important than any job can ever be. There's so many people who hinge their entire lives off of, I have a job, I need a job, I have to have a job, and then that becomes all they do. So this book really helps drive home the idea that you are more than your job. You do not need that job needs you. You can go find another one, you can expand, you can do other things, you can grow out of it. So that's kind of my biggest takeaway from the whole thing.
Beautiful. Jay, I think you owe us an explanation on this one as well. What does the book mean to you, brother?
Oh, I mean, what's crazy is I'm very similar to Will. I actually found this book through Fresh and Fit. So Myron and Walt have recommended a lot of things that have basically brought nothing but positivity and upward momentum in my life, right? They introduced me to both Charlie and Miguel. And as you guys know, they're our mentors. And so Myron was talking about Rich Dad, Poor Dad and Kiyosaki. And so I was like, okay, well, this guy introduced me to two of my greatest mentors. I should probably take a little bit more seriously the things that he recommends, right? And one of the things that he recommended to read was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so the reason why that book really resonated for me is because, number one, Kiyosaki's Japanese and I'm Filipino. So we're basically family, man. We're both Asians. We both live we're both from islands. But all jokes aside, one of the things that really resonated with me was he's from his poor dad. He mentions his poor dad. He's from a family that's very similar to most traditional Asian families, right? So I could empathize with him in that sense. His dad, and he makes it a point to say that his dad was didn't really have bad intentions or ill will, even though you would consider his dad on the socialist side. But he his family promoted a lot of the things that a lot of Asian families do, right? It's like you get a good job, you go to school, you go to college. Once you graduate high school, you get a career and you work hard to work up the corporate ladder, and you retire afterwards, right? And so a lot of people in Asian cultures grow up within that kind of paradigm, and it is very, very, very similar. Like my experience to Robert's is very similar in the sense that when you go to your family, right, your Asian family, and you say, hey, man, I'm not going to be a doctor, or I'm not going to be a lawyer, or I'm not going to be an engineer. I'm going to go and I'm going to go be an entrepreneur. And in some cases, some people say like in my case, I was like, yeah, I'm going to drop out of college and pursue my own business, right, and become an entrepreneur. Like that is not very well received in Asian families, right? Asian culture in general, just like it really wasn't with Robert, right? Like he talks about stories where him and his dad would butt heads all the time, talking about concepts about money and assets and liabilities. And so that book is important to me, and it resonated with me because it made me realize that there were other people there were other Asian people in that similar position growing up, right? And that I was not alone in that scenario. And obviously all the good stuff in the book, right? You learn about assets and liabilities. You learn about why exactly it's important to be a self-sovereign individual. You learn exactly why taxes aren't really for the rich; they're really for the poor, right? And how the rich use the tax system to their advantage. And so all of that just really resonated with me because it draws such a significant parallel to all the things that we learn in crypto, right? About being self-sovereign, escaping the traditional financial system, etc., and gaining financial independence. And so because of all of those parallels from this book and from Robert's experiences and his stories and all the stuff that we talk about every single day with crypto, it was just like a good marriage of subjects. So that's my experience with the book, and that's why I'm pretty excited to talk about it.
Beautiful. You actually had a good point there. That I didn't have it in my show notes, but talking about the tax man is a very large part of this book. I recently saw a reel with Robert Kiyosaki. He said that as an American, you have a patriotic duty to try to pay as little taxes as possible. So the country was originally founded as a tax-free nation, and only did we get the actual federal income tax after around the First World War. And then since then, it's just been going up and up. And he says, do your duty, rob the government legally, So anyways,
motherfucking Woodrow Wilson bringing that income tax down upon all of us. For those of you who do not have a least favorite president, your new least favorite president is Woodrow Wilson. Go look up all the stuff that he did and how he ruined our economy, and you'll thank me later.
Remember, man, a little caveat to what Zenith said there. You rob the government legally, right? Not illegally, man. You don't want the IRS knocking on your door. We rob the government legally using the tax system.
You know what's hilarious about robbing legally too? The hilarious thing about that is literally if you do something in life and for the society, right? Like creating jobs and things like that, right? By starting business, putting people in houses and all that. If you do that, then the government basically allows you to rob them blind.
I think we should step away from the framing of it as robbing, and just like you're using the system the way it is designed to like incentivize you. It's a means to an end. It's a tool, you know. It's like you're using the screwdriver as a screwdriver, not as a chisel. You're using a crowbar as a crowbar, not as a hammer, right?
Nah, fuck the government, steal it from them.
Sure. We can put it in that and like, you know, I enjoy that. It's very fun and stuff. But like for people that would shy away from that line of thinking, it's like there's like the reason that the rich don't pay taxes is because they learn. It's not necessarily because they're fucking wealthy. Like Elon Musk, when he made his Twitter purchase, you know, X, Y, and Z number of days ago, he liquidated a bunch of his Tesla stock or his whatever the heck stock. I don't remember what it was, but he paid a boatload of taxes that he didn't necessarily have to. I remember like he made a speech about it. He's like, look, there's ways around this, or like I don't have to necessarily pay taxes, but I'm about to be the man who's paid the most taxes in American history when I do this thing to, you know, buy Twitter, now X, right? So like,
what a
there's
flex,
definitely,
man.
I know, and it's like, you know, there are ways around paying taxes, and I would say that there's like, instead of calling them rich people, poor people, I would say that there's smart people that learn how to play the game and learn how to use the tools, and there's ignorant or purposefully like stupid people that do not do so. It's like, you know, people that complain all day long because they're trying to use their screwdriver as a hammer, and it's like, man, fuck, this screwdriver is a shitty hammer, right? But they're not using this tool that's put out from the correct way. And like the government, all that it does in its infinite wisdom, as we know, I'm a huge fan of the government, they come out with this set of rules and regulations, and like, hey, this is stuff that we incentivize with tax breaks, and this is stuff that we don't incentivize. So if you do these things, then you don't have to pay taxes. And if you don't do those things, then congratulations, you're somewhere between like, you know, like up to what is it, 38% for income tax, like for the wealthiest. I think it probably goes even higher than that once you start making boatloads of money on your W-2s and stuff.
Is the top.
Anyways, enough of my little rant. Those are my thoughts.
It's absolutely just playing within the rules. You're not breaking the law. You're just looking at the rules as they're laid out, and you're operating the best you can inside them. Yeah. Alrighty, with that said, we will talk about taxes later on when we get to it. But first, I wanted to get everything just on the road first for our audience. We're going to be going through a very, very brief synopsis of the book, and then I've got a few topics laid out, and then after that, I'm going to be opening it up to our panel to talk about their favorite parts, the things that they think are the most impactful, and then once we have exhausted everything and squeezed all the water out of the stone, we'll finally close it off and then throw it to the audience. So at the end, we're going to be asking you, what do you think our next book to cover is going to be? If you go and join our Telegram chat, wink, wink, there is a book list that I have posted about the short list of books that we're looking to focus on. So maybe go check that out or throw out ideas of your own. With that said, let's get to it. So, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The idea of the book is that Robert Kiyosaki, growing up, had two fathers he referred to. His own father, who was a doctor, I believe, he referred to as his poor dad. It's not a dig or anything. It's just saying he followed the rules, stayed inside the system, had a very good life, raised him well, but just never really achieved that level of wealth that a lot of us are looking for in life. And honestly, it's that degree of entrepreneurialism. And that's where he finds his rich dad, his buddy's father, who actually owns businesses and allows them at a young age to come watch and absorb knowledge. And that many times he actually even tempts them with offers to make them like wage employees. And he says, the sooner you accept that, you're a slave to the system forever. So the story of the book is basically him trying to resist that as much as possible, absorb all the knowledge, and learn as much as he can. All right, here are the main points of the book. Chapter 1 is the rich don't work for money per se. They figure out how to work for other things that instead make them money. Step 2 is that so many people are not financially literate. And he talks about what is an asset and a liability. We will be covering that one shortly. After that, we have chapter 3, which is minding your own business. What he means by this is that you should focus on a business that's going to make you money instead of make someone else money. Chapter 4, we have saving money from the tax man. business owners use business incentives to take money in, pay themselves in their business, and then pay taxes at the end, as opposed to the average individual who gets a W-2, which is you get your money, you pay taxes, and now you have everything left for you to spend. Chapter 5 is The Rich Invent Money. It says that money is not real and it can be many different things. He alludes to money could be energy. Money could merely be an agreement between people making a deal. And then it could also be just opportunity and market knowledge. We're going to be talking about that one later as well. Chapter 6 is work to learn, not for money per se. It says that diversifying your career and learning different trades and skills is very important. He says a lot of people are actually only one skill away from becoming exponentially more wealthy than they already are. They just need that one last skill to unlock their potential. Chapter 7 is overcoming obstacles, talks about fear, cynicism, bad habits, and arrogance, and tells people not to get dragged down by Chicken Littles that are claiming the sky is falling. And then chapter 8 is there's gold everywhere. People just are not trained to see it. This is another topic we're going to cover, which is what is opportunity, how to identify it, and how to be ready for it. And then lastly, he covers just a summary and goes into a brief 10-step blueprint of how to be an entrepreneur and how to think like one in the future. So with that said, boys, what do you think the thesis of the book is? Mine is that the difference between the rich and the poor is that they understand how to utilize money and make it work for them instead of work themselves for the money. Thoughts? Yep. Jay, what do you got?
Agreed. Yeah, because so here's the thing, right? One of the key points that he makes in the book is that a lot of people, what they do with money is they just keep spending it, right? Because they think that the things that they're buying are actually assets when indeed they're liabilities, right? That's one of the primary distinctions that he makes in the book, is that when you buy an asset, it's actually something that generates you income, right? Something that puts money in your pocket. And then the liability is the opposite. The liability is something that takes away money from your pocket, right? And then I remember him talking about one instance where he applied for a bank loan, and the bank loan wouldn't provide him the loan because he made a considerable amount of his income through rent, right? Because he owns a lot of real estate. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty strange. And then he goes on to say that once he added all the liabilities that people usually think are actually assets, like his golf clubs, like his Armani suits, then that increases his actual net worth. And so I think one of the main theses in this book is, or part of the main thesis of this book, is learning how to understand the difference between assets and liabilities, right? And how to make that money work for you. He speaks a lot about, right? And I think this was in the chapter of Minding Your Own Business when he was working for Xerox. I think it was Xerox. He kept his day job making that commission at Xerox, but because he hated seeing his paycheck every single month and see exactly how much the government was taking from him before that money even hit his bank account, he was like, all right, then I'm going to focus on growing my asset column, right? Until it gets to the point where it's generating me such a significant amount of income every single month that I can leave my job, right? And so I think that's the main focus that's one of the main thesis, like one of the main principles in this book, is to learn what money is and how to use it to buy you assets that generate you income, right? So I'll leave it there for now because my God, I can keep going on and on this. Let's go ahead and get what Nate and Will think about the main thesis of this book.
Real quick, though, I do have a shout out for a friend of the channel, Gains by Casey. He says, love this book, is the first financial book he read, and he has a major shout out to Mr. Kiyosaki and all of us D-Gens. Well, shout out to you fellow D-Gen. Glad to see you here and glad you like it.
Fellow D-Gen,
right.
Let's go.
All right, gentlemen. Thoughts on the thesis? What'd you take from it?
So what you're talking about, Jay, right there is something very interesting that, like, when it comes to the book, right, he's sitting there talking about, try to avoid paying taxes. But the funny thing about, again, I'm going to say is that you're only not paying taxes if you're actually useful to society, right? You're helping create jobs and you're building houses, things like that, right? So that's number one, like just being a good person for the community, as a man, growing yourself out to be reliable within the bigger community, right? That alone is actually really quite an interesting and cool thing about, at least what I take from it, right, about the book itself. But the other thing that I look at is how to get outside of the fear, right? Because he talks about that, or at least his rich dad was talking about that quite a bit. And especially talking about his poor dad who really fell into that, right? It's what is the it was I got a thing on here. It's like, so life, it's an entire cycle where life pushes you around, and it kind of like, it'll push you towards something that may be a little bit scarier, right? But that's probably the best direction for you to go. And then what people usually do though is they get scared and then they like back off and they're like, nah, I need to keep something going, right? Without thinking, hey, maybe I should step into that, right? And I fell into this a little bit myself throughout my life, where it's like, okay, yeah, I'm just gonna go work a job, even though I originally went to the book saying, hey, I don't want to be working anymore. I want to retire earlier. And so I really like the way that there's a lot of lessons in there as far as like what you're able to do in your own life, you know, bring it into there and actually become just a better man in general, or woman, a better human, and help everyone else.
Sounds about right. All right, Will, buddy, what you think?
I got a pretty short thesis for what like, or theory for what I think the thesis of the book is, and it's something that Kelly no, excuse me, not Mrs. McGettit. That's right. I thought you were someone else for some reason, someone from my past. But anyways, I think that is something that Mrs. McGettit had talked about earlier, is that like Robert talks about in the book that like you don't need a job, you need a business, right? One of the things he touches on in the book is he asks people like what's their business, as opposed to like what's their what was the other one? Their profession. Like there's business in there and there's profession. The business is the thing that you have that makes you money, that makes you wealthier. The profession is like the thing that you do with your time that like generates income. So, you know, like if a dude works at McDonald's but he's saving up money like in the crypto sphere, then his business is cryptocurrency, because that's the thing that's going to generate him wealth. And his profession is, you know, he's a sandwich artist, or we'll call it that, right? So this is something that I think about in life, and I'll throw another word in there too, and it's like the purpose of a human being's life. You know, everyone wants to do different things. Like it's the stuff that you do with your time, whether or not you're getting paid, and if you can find a way to make the thing that you like to do the thing that you get paid for, then you've found your purpose in life, whether that's raising kids or stitching up wounds or flipping burger patties or serving coffee or like driving yachts or whatever. You know, there's things that people like to do with their time that gives them a reason to live. There's some story that I hearken back to, whereas like there was this like 97-year-old Japanese dude that was like chopping wood, and he was like, and somebody was asking like, why don't you have like the younger kids do it? And he's like, oh, well, this is my purpose in life. And so like at some point he grew too old to chop the wood, and he died shortly thereafter, because it's like there was no more reason to keep living or whatever. So I think that one of the things that Robert talks about in the book, that's like one of the more important things, the thesis I would say, is to figure out what your business is, and then to figure out like and to separate that from your profession if you can. And if you can't, then, you know, just like keep the two in different little categories. What's the thing that I do that generates me like wealth, and what's the thing that I do that brings me, you know, my regular day-to-day income and stuff. So
for sure, a popular thing that I've heard when talking about how to find something that is both worthwhile, interests you, and makes you money is that find out what you're good at, find out what keeps your passion going, and then find out what people are willing to pay you for. The intersection point of all those different things is going to be that sweet spot where you really just like kick it off. With that said, Mrs. McGettit, what do you think is the thesis of the book, or what do you think is the point that just ties everything together for this?
For me, I really look at the fact of, he brings it up quite a bit in here, that going through school and going through the institution and going through college teaches you how to be a worker. It does not teach you how to deal with money, period. There's nothing in school that will give you that background. So I think one of the big takeaways, I guess my personal opinion on the thesis by the end of it all, is that if you don't push for that, you won't get it. If you just kind of accept the way that things are, then you're just going to, like I said before, you'll just be a slave to the system at that point. So he really wants people to understand that and to not fall into that trap. So that's kind of the biggest thing that that I really got out of everything.
Fantastic. That's a good explanation. All right. With that said, let's kick it off to the first topic. I think this is one of the more important like basis points for the book, which is when he talks about in the financial literacy chapter is what is the definition of an asset versus a liability? This is a point that a lot of people get wrong in Robert's opinion, and is going to be the foundation for getting money to work for you. So with that said, Robert talks about the definition of an asset is something that produces income, appreciates, or does both. So with that said, one of the big pitfalls that people fall into is that they think their home is an asset. Now, looking at what Robert talks about, an asset is something that produces money, appreciates, or does both. A house will appreciate, especially in the last 5-10 years for sure. But when the book was written, I don't think houses were appreciating nearly as much. This is a little bit before the .com area in like 96, 97, 98. And then lastly, producing income. If you're living in your house, you might be producing income, but the house itself is not producing income. So with that said, we obviously are the DGen Roundtable, and we talk about cryptocurrency all the time. So gentlemen and lady, how do you think understanding what an asset is in our world will really help you get ahead?
Oh, I think it'll help you get ahead a lot faster than 99.9% of the population, right? That might sound like a bit extreme, but you have to realize that the overwhelming majority of people in the world exist in the middle of the bell curve, right? That's where the average person lies. And so, like I alluded to earlier, most people, they don't realize that the things that they're buying every single day, right? The American dream, you could say, right? You got 3-bedroom home, 2-bathroom, car garage, 2-car garage, white picket fence. A lot of people think that thing is an asset. Now, what's the word I'm looking for, man? If you think about it in like the esoteric way, right? That certainly is an asset, right? Because that's where your family lives, that's where you raise your children, etc. But in terms of the actual technical definition of what an asset is, unless you're renting that space to somebody and it's generating you an income every single month, the mortgage that you're paying on your house is taking money out of your pocket. And for like most people who take a mortgage that's like, what's the common mortgage? It's 30-year fixed interest. Like that thing, the bank is going to keep making money out of you for 30 years, right? Because you're going to have to keep paying that interest. And so by definition, that thing is not an asset. And so if you understand the difference between both, then you can make moves in your life that'll allow you to accumulate as much assets as possible that produce you an income that you then can use to buy liabilities, right? And Robert gives a lot of examples of this in the book, where he's using money generated from his asset columns to buy liabilities, right? And then even in the beginning, he'll buy a property and consider that a liability, but then he'll rent it out. That'll produce an income. The asset will appreciate in a few years, and then he'll sell it, and he won't even take capital gains on it because he'll roll that over into a different property, right? Something that we might discuss later called a 1031 exchange. Right, that's one of the ways where a lot of wealthy people take advantage of the tax codes in order to significantly decrease their tax liability. And so if you understand the definition of both the asset and the liability, you're going to be able to get ahead really fast in life, because you're going to stay away from buying fucking liabilities every single time and focus your capital and your energy into buying assets that produce you income. And then the income that's generated from those assets, that's what you use to buy the fancy watches, the nice cars, go on crazy vacations and buy dinners and stuff like that. But yeah, man, that's my thought on the whole idea of asset liability and how it kind of relates to our world in crypto, right?
Beautiful. These are two big keywords that Robert talks about in this and also a lot of his other writings, which is the quadrant theory and the 4 quadrants. I guess I can throw this to the panel. Any of you guys want to talk about quadrant and trying to explain that to our audience? Basically got income, expenditures, assets, and liabilities. Jump on.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite easy to try and figure out like how many hours out of your day are you working to bring in money, and then how much of that money you're bringing in is being out the door, being sent out the door, right? Being expenditures, right? And then in the other columns on the bottom, it's how much of these liabilities is taking that money, right? Is the sinkhole sending it out the door? And then how many assets are actually adding to your income? That's about, it's kind of like almost like a cross type of deal, or I guess you could put like an entire pathway on there, right? But that's quite literally the long and short of it. Is it putting money in your pocket or is it taking it out of your pocket, right? When we're talking about assets, the first thing I'm thinking about is money printers, right? That's what I'm doing in cryptos. I'm focusing solely on that asset section, where I just have these money printers constantly giving me more and more and more, than putting it into my income. And obviously it's not like I'm rich or anything yet, so it's not like I can just retire. And so what I'm doing is I'm eating the absolute hell out of all the income that I have by into the asset column. And what I'm doing is I'm taking my income as much as possible, and I'm lowering the total amount of expenditures as possible, so that way I have the largest chunk of my income, right, that I could possibly get. And then I'm also trying to stay the heck away from, which unfortunately my car is a sinkhole, but I'm trying to stay the heck away from any liabilities, and I'm just dumping all that I've got into the asset, right, asset column. So that's been kind of my thesis and what I've ultimately learned from the book. And yeah, so you got anything about that, Will?
Man, I totally forgot the question, man.
Talking about quadrant theory, assets, income, expenditures, assets, and liabilities.
I don't remember anything about the quadrant theory. But as far as income, expenditures, and assets and liabilities go, in the crypto world, it's pretty difficult to tell which coins, outside of like, the blue chips, which coins are going to be assets and which coins are going to be liabilities. And what's even more fun about that is even the things that you choose to buy that are assets, they're not going to be assets all the time. They're going to be assets for a period of about maybe 6 to 9 months, and then they're going to, or like maybe even a year if you're lucky, and then they're going to be liabilities for about 3 years, right? So if you don't play your cards right, something that could be an asset, like say you bought Bitcoin, right? But if you bought Bitcoin at the top, then congratulations, you've now got something that you have to wait a long time for, like in order for it to be an asset to you. If you buy Bitcoin at the bottom, right? If you buy a diamond when they're selling the diamonds for pennies, then you've got an asset. You've just got it at a rock bottom price. But if you buy a diamond for a diamond price, then you got to wait till the diamond's worth like 2 diamond price or 3 diamond price in order for it to in order for that that item that you bought to truly be an asset, as opposed to like a liability. So you're like, if you can play your time games right, and if you can play your price games right, then you can make almost any cryptocurrency into an asset, right? Whether it's Bitcoin or Dogecoin or Pepe or Hex or Cardano, whatever the case may be. Things go up and things go down, and it's about your ability to time the market, read the sentiment, and ultimately like be a patient, strong peanut brain diamond hand and wait for the appropriate times and sell price things. I think that's how the quadrant sort of kind of flows into the cryptocurrency sphere. That is more or less what our little podcasty discussion thing is all centered around.
Well said, Will. All right, Mrs. McGettit, I have a question for you that I think you touched on a little bit earlier. So, in your opinion, what do you think are some of the biggest pitfalls in life that people think are assets, but really are liabilities? And why do you think people get tricked or fall into the trap of thinking that they're the other thing when they're not?
Sure. For me, the biggest and most prominent that most people fall into is going to be your home. And I would like to break this down, just really, really kind of give a simplistic kind of analysis as to why. As soon as you buy a home, as soon as you own a home, it is your responsibility. I know a lot of people who refuse to rent, and they wait to move out of their parents' house until they can physically buy a home. And I personally don't agree with that, because renting is a very good experience to start learning about the real world. So, I mean, there's something to be said for that, you know, rent for a year or two, don't rent for the rest of your life, because a lot of people fall into that as well. But the biggest thing is, when you own the home, everything is now your problem. Any repairs that need to be done, you got to fix. If fire breaks out, you lost it. Then you got to deal with insurance, and you got to deal with mortgages and everything. And a lot of people, for example, my great uncle passed about 2 years ago now. And when he passed, they only had to pay off, I think, like 20 grand left to own his home. And the bank immediately tried to seize it. And they made all these excuses about medical bills, because he was disabled too. He had Medicare. But they didn't care. They're like, he had all these past bills that he owed, and now we're taking the house. And my mom fought them, and they got to keep it ultimately. But it's a very good example of how these things that you think you own and that you think are going to be a big deal for you later in life, and they're going to be able to like help you, are really not. So that's kind of my thoughts have always been that. And I'm in the mindset of like, there was a different book. I can't remember what it was, but this one was about cars, and he had a really good example for cars. The man had made his money through, what is that called? Not crypto, because this was before crypto existed. Stocks. Thank you. Jeez, wow, I forgot what that was called for a minute. But he made his money through stocks, and he had it in his mindset where when he wanted to buy a car, it was a sports car, it was like $200,000 car, one of the really, really high end things. And he refused to take money out of his stocks in order to purchase this. So instead, he went to his broker and he said, make me 200 grand, take whatever your commission is, but at the end of it, I want 200 grand after everything is said and done. So make enough that he gets all of his commissions, and then he gives this guy the 200 grand. And the broker did it. And his reasoning for this was because as soon as you buy that car, as soon as you take it off the lot, it loses 20% of its value. It's a massive, massive drop. As soon as that car is no longer considered new, it's losing money. And then from there, you have gas, you have repairs, you have, if you get into an accident, you got to pay insurance, all of these other things. So that's probably would be, in my opinion, is a house and a car are the biggest two. And then, I mean, it kind of goes into anything like boats. You know, if you buy a boat, if you buy like a trailer, if you buy like a RV, all of those things do basically the same thing. As soon as they're owned, they're used.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to add something to that question, right? So a lot of people will hear this and they'll think, okay, so a home and cars are liabilities. Not necessarily, right? The way that most people think about it, yes. However, there certainly is a way for you to purchase a home or purchase a vehicle and make that into an asset, right? For example, one of my very best friends, Edwin, who's also a very big fan of Rich Dad Poor Dad, he is very big into real estate. He just purchased his second property here in Arizona. And you know what he does? He lives in it, and he lives in a property for a year, right? As his primary residence, he rents out the other 2 or 3 rooms. After that, he moves out, and then he purchases his next property, right? So he's buying homes, but because he's renting out those properties, guess what is happening? It's self-liquidating, right? In the beginning, he might just be breaking even, but once he moves out and he starts renting out the room that he was staying in, now he's generating an income from that home. Same thing with cars. Like, for example, if you look at Uber or any of these like rideshare lifts, even that app that allows you to rent somebody's car, right? If you look at that app, some of the most popular models are like Jeep Wranglers and like a Tesla Model S. So if you were to buy one of those 2 cars, instead of you having to pay insurance and having to pay the car note every single month, you can make money off of that car by renting it out to other people. So things that fall into your liabilities column doesn't necessarily have to be a liability. You just have to identify how to turn it into an asset.
Yeah, Jay, and I do want to add to that really quick. A perfect example of that is actually, you've mentioned Fresh and Fit a couple times here. And one of their Money Monday episodes, Fresh went into what he was doing when he was first starting out, trying to get, build up, get money, not get out of the rat race type of thing. And one thing that he did, and this is brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant. Like, I was very impressed with this, but he bought a duplex and he lived in one of the apartments, and he rented out the second one, and the rent from the other one that he wasn't using paid for the mortgage. Therefore, he had no rent. And then he did that. He said he did it for like a year or two, where he lived absolutely at the bottom, didn't go out anywhere, didn't go to like restaurants, didn't go out for drinks, anything like that. He spent throughout the entire year like 12 grand to live, and then everything else that he made that year he saved. He had 2 jobs too. I don't remember what they were, but I mean, imagine that 2 years where you're only spending 12 grand to live. That's like, most of us pay more than that in rent per year, let alone everything else. So that's a very, very, very good point. You can definitely turn these things into assets if you do it right.
Oh, absolutely. That's the key difference between the two, is you got to understand where the cash flow is going. Understanding cash flow, I think, is it's a term that's thrown around a lot, but I don't think a lot of people actually understand their own numbers or understand what all of cash flow entails. Like specifically, we talked about Uber, ride shares and stuff. A lot of people might be thinking in their minds that my car is an asset because I'm using it to make money. But then you also have to do the math yourself and figure out what are the numbers, because if your gas, your insurance, and your repairs are a big thing. You got to keep up with your maintenance on vehicles. Otherwise, you're going to lose the entire asset. If all of those costs are outweighing the income coming in, it's still technically a liability just because the cash flow is negative. So that said, though, excellent stuff, team. I think we're ready to go on to the next topic. So later on in the book, Robert talks about one of the things that people complain to him about is that they either don't have opportunities in front of them, or when opportunities come up, they're not ready or prepared to take them. And this is where Robert talks about the opportunity trifecta. First, you got to have an opportunity. Second, you got to be able to identify that it's there. And then third, you got to have the preparation done where you either have the capital, the time, or just the effort ready to seize that opportunity. So, question to the panel, where do you guys think people fall short in this regard? And that what do you think is the most common part of this triangle that they don't have?
I think it's knowledge, man.
Yeah. Knowledge and not identifying the opportunity.
Yeah, think about this, right? So like me, Jeff, and Tracker, we were simply doing a show, right, on LP. And we were just going through Pulse Chain, and we happened to look at this thing called Chirp Finance. And we're like, oh, what is this? And just kind of as a meme, we took a look at it, and we started looking at the APRs and everything. We're like, oh, wait, there's an actual play right here. It's an opportunity. And we had we had Pulse ready to go, Liquid Pulse and all that. And we're like, we're going to do this. And we ended up actually making a couple $100 just straight LPing on it for a little while. But then at the same time, as soon as things started going pretty south, thanks, Gary, we got the heck out very quickly, right? So the opportunity was there. We already had the liquidity that was available to be thrown in very, very fast, and it all comes from what's up here, right? We noticed it, and we ran with it very quickly. You know what I mean? So it's all about knowledge, man. You just have to understand these things.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna go ahead, Jay, because I'm about to disagree.
Yo, Will, I've been talking, so go ahead, man. Give us your thoughts.
All right, so I will definitely concede to the point that knowledge is very important, but I think that the thing that people lack the most is initiative and drive and just like the willingness to fucking do stuff, Sure, yeah, fill in whatever placeholder words you want, chutzpah, like something, right? So people generally know most of the things that they need to do in order to like everybody knows how to be physically fit. Everybody knows how to brush their teeth. Everybody knows how to wash their hands, right? Not everyone does all of these things. Everyone I would say that, as far as the middle of the bell curve is considered, that's what I'm talking about when I say everybody's the middle of the bell curve. I'm disregarding the super duper dumbs and the super duper smarts on either side, right? Most people that are in the middle of the bell curve, they just live a normal life. They do the easy thing. They go the pathway of least resistance. I wouldn't say that it's a knowledge problem quite so much as it is a people taking steps, people taking actions, people doing things problem, right? I'm going to agree with Richard Hart on this one. Most everyone knows most of the things that they need to do. Sure, we don't know all the exact steps like, and that's what like mentors and coaches are for. But most people won't even like look into that sort of stuff. So while I will agree that knowledge is very important, but most people won't even take the time or take the steps necessary to obtain the knowledge, right? I would say that's the thing that's missing with most people is the not the drive, because the drive is like the motivation, but like the actual decision making process is the thing that people slack on the most.
Absolutely. I think we got a great comment here from one of our viewers, Hex Edits 369. He says that knowledge plus action equals power. I think this is entirely correct. Not exactly in this book specifically, but something that Robert Kiyosaki has talked about previously is that he's very interested in starting up businesses and then selling them, basically doing IPOs, launches. And one of the things he talks about with that is that you really got to have the guts, and you really just got to have that iron, just will, those diamond hands to stick it through. Because it's not going to be easy. It's going to be rough. Like one of the examples he's talked about is he was trying to start up a gold mine. And then one of the partners he was working with says, hey, if you're really serious about this, I want you to go scout this place in South America for me and then report back. So he flies out, scouts the trip, and then is down there and says, this place is a piece of junk. There's nothing here. These people are not trustworthy. They're not professional. What are we doing? And then he comes back and he goes, that whole trip was a waste of time. Why am I doing that? And then his partner basically just looked at him and said, you got to be willing to put in time, reap no rewards, but know that at some point in the future, you are going to win. You got to be able to tough it out and go through. Again, he talks about later in the book, all the Chicken Littles telling people to do things. At one point, he even found one of his friends a great real estate deal, set up the deal, got financing, and then a week later he calls him. The guy's like, oh yeah, no, I backed out of that deal. And he says, why? He says, oh, because one of my neighbors who doesn't know shit was saying that it doesn't sound good or it just doesn't feel right. He's like, you listen to that guy? Like, what are you doing? You had the opportunity. It was literally in your hand, and then you just got scared. It's that action. It's the conviction. So yeah.
I'm gonna quote Richard Hart when I say that the world doesn't need more like smart people to learn things. The world needs more idiots to just go out and take action. Like that, I think that sums it up. The thesis of like what I think that people are missing is it's just like there's too many people that spend all their time learning about things and not doing anything about the stuff that they're learning, right? If you're listening to our podcast and you're not taking anything from it, more power to you. That's your choice. But I would say that you're wasting your own time. Like if you're going out into the world and you're learning about stuff and you're not doing anything with it, right? Like we need, like society needs, you need, your family needs, everyone needs people to be doing things. People that aren't taking action are just consuming. And if everyone's consuming, then the world just like eats itself out of existence, right? We need people out there, flipping the burgers, pouring the coffee, driving the cars, starting the businesses, folding the flags, whatever the stuff is. Like we need more people doing stuff. You need more people doing stuff. You need to do stuff yourself. That's all I got.
Absolutely. One of my lifting partners has a quote that he always says to me in the gym. He talks about this one guy. He was like, yeah, he wanted to be Mr. Olympia. He was just too smart for it, and his own brains got in his way.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
So I forgot who this quote was from, but I was listening to a story about Michael Jordan. And they were talking about both Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, right? But I think more towards Kobe Bryant. And it went something along the lines of, do you think that there wasn't other people born in Michael Jordan's era or born in Kobe Bryant's era that could have been Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant? And he said, sure, there certainly could have been. But a lot of those people didn't have the ability to identify the opportunity that laid in front of them, right? They might have had the talent, right? But they didn't have the work ethic, right? And they didn't have so if you have the talent, but you don't have the work, you don't have the work ethic to go along with it, then you're not going to be able to go anywhere, right? I know Will kind of disagreed with Nate earlier about the knowledge thing, but I think me and Nate were alluding to is the knowledge to be able to identify opportunity, right? Because I'm going to speak about myself personally. I didn't realize that crypto was the opportunity until I started listening to Charlie and Miguel. And then the next step was, do I open myself up to that opportunity, right? Once I identified that opportunity, I think the reason why people don't achieve success, even though they come across opportunity all the time, is something that Robert talks about in the book, right? They get paralyzed by the fear of failure, or the fear of what people will think about him, right? He talks about why most people, even when they do finally decide to invest, they decide to invest in those safe investment vehicles, right? That are going to give them anywhere like 3 to 5%. The fuck are you going to do with 5%? You can't wipe your ass with 5%. That your inflation is going to eat into your 5% certificate of deposit at Chase Bank, right? But because people fail losing and failure so much, they let that opportunity pass them by, right? That's why a lot of people are missing out on crypto right now, because they are so terrified about the volatility in this market that they do not realize that they are passing on the opportunity that they have already identified that's laying in front of them, right? There's this. I wish Brendan was here, because as a Christian, he can speak to this, right? Or I guess I can speak to it because I'm a Christian. But you know that there's an old saying that goes like, ask and you shall receive, and knock and the door shall be open.
And seek and you shall find.
Yeah, seek and you shall find, right? All of those things require you to actually seek. You have to look. Knock, when that door is open to you, you actually have to be willing to walk through it, right? A lot of people, when they pray, and I'm pretty sure Brendan can speak on this as well, right? I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys know, Christians or devout, they just pray and think that God is going to give things to them. That's not the answer, right? What's the thing? Like, God is the archetype for the great father, right? And what a good father does is he doesn't give you the answers, right? He sets things in place so that you can find that opportunity, but it is up to you, the individual, to be able to identify it and take it when it presents itself to you. Because otherwise, it's just going to pass you by.
That's that's ultimately what Rich Dad ended up doing, actually, at the very beginning of the book. It took him what was it, 2 months for him to get so fed up with the low pay that he ran into a meeting with his rich dad and started yelling at him the same sort of way that his employers and or former employers, right, or employees, sorry, was doing to him. And he's like, by the time he walked out of that meeting, he had just agreed to not getting paid at all, right? And so, but here's the thing, because he's not getting paid at all, it forced him to, instead of just working for a paycheck, it forced him to start thinking, hey, wait, how can I actually make money? Like, how can I actually do something else here? Rich Dad is saying, right, it's right in front of you. Just use this.
Yeah, Robert identified that opportunity right there, right? Because what he lost out on getting paid, what was it, right? Rich Dad said, I'm going to pay you $5. $5 an
I think
hour.
This was back in the 80s. I want to say he was paying him literally 5 to 10 cents.
No,
10 cents.
When he offered,
But-
right? When
but
Robert,
then,
He kept
Later
bumping
on.
up the offer,
Yeah.
and then he kept looking at him and be like, you have to refuse this. You
Yes.
have to refuse this.
Yep.
I'm going to tempt you, but you have to stay strong and refuse it.
Yeah.
And once it got to $5, that's when it. Yeah, and once it got to $5, that's when it finally occurred to him, wait a minute, this seems like too good to be true type of deal. And that's when, he decided, okay, what's actually going on? What are you doing right now? But it took from 10 cents to 25 cents to 50 cents to $1 to $5. It took that long, right? Until he's finally like, wait a minute, what are you doing here? So I find that very interesting.
Absolutely. Mrs. McGettit, what's your take? Do you think people are lacking conviction or knowledge more?
Sorry about that. I couldn't hit my mute button there for a second.
No worries.
I definitely think it's a combination of the two. One of the things that I think is really good to bring up for this particular subject is the cash flow game that Robert ended up making once he had his business going and he was trying to teach people these concepts. He goes on to say that a lot of people got really upset and they quit, and that one story he had about the lady demanding a refund because she thought it was all garbage. So he goes through some really good examples in there where people are like, oh, well, I got the opportunity, but I don't have the money. Oh, well, I got the money, but I never pulled the opportunity card. And then somebody, oh, I got the boat card. This is great. And then they found out, the hard way that was not good. So I think a lot of it is what that really drove home to me is a lot of people always have like excuses, and like you guys have been saying, fear. They do not seize the opportunities when they come their way because it's too risky. A lot of people have that risk aversion, and that's one thing that you really got to get over. At the end of the day, you got to get over it. Otherwise, again, you'll just be stuck. So that really stood out to me, and I think that really does touch home with crypto too. Because if you're not willing to dip your feet into crypto, you're just gonna ignore it. You're gonna miss it. You can't let that go because it's too big. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and if you think about
Absolutely.
it, Mrs. McGinnis, if you think about it, like, how is it that we're living, right? as poorly as possible right now, because again, I want to have as much money as possible to throw into the asset category, and I'm going to keep doing that until there's at least enough for me to live the same way I'm living now, but that's straight out of the assets. And so now what happens there, and this is my whole idea with the money printer, retiring, right? You never stop working. You just retire from your job, right? You buy back your time. Once that happens, I'm going to have plenty of time to go do all these other things that I really want to do in life that are going to be making a lot more money. But I need to get that asset category to my income category first.
Good stuff, gang. Yeah, Mrs. McGinnis is right. Robert Kiyosaki invented the cash flow quadrant game, also known as, I think it's the rat race or something. It's a great learning tool. And like you said with that story, some people look at it and they don't understand the concepts behind it. They just they draw the boat card and they say, great, this is a fun thing to have. That's cool until you realize that boats are some of the biggest money pits you can ever find outside of aircraft. Aircraft are worse. So stay away from those two. I'm just saying. Alrighty, we're gonna get to my last topic before I turn it loose to our table of degens and they can really run wild with it. So my last topic is gonna be, what do you think a crypto rich dad or poor dad looks like? I'm gonna go ahead and give a big shout out right now to who I think is a lot of our mentors, and that's Charlie and Miguel of Cultivate Crypto and Dollar Cost Crypto. If I had to think about it, those are the guys they're some of the guys that told me to read this book, although I had other influences. Sorry, cat. And those guys are, in my mind, they are the rich dads. They are the ones that are seeking out opportunities. They offer the courses. They have their money printers going, and they also are actively seeking out opportunities. And they're even willing to share it with the people they work with. So I think it's phenomenal. So over to our lovely panel. What is a rich and poor crypto dad?
All right, I'm gonna take this one first. Rich and poor crypto dad, believe it or not, there's a lot of you guys in this space, us included, right? A lot of you guys are looking in your portfolios right now and you're like, holy shit, man, we're all poor as hell because everything is down anywhere between 85 to 99%, right? Thought that the bear market was over? Nah, man. Bear market might be over Bitcoin, but for a lot of the altcoins, they're still finding new lows. So right now, you guys are poor dads, right? But you have to realize that this comes in waves. Eventually, if you hold out long enough, and you're into the right assets, you're going to become the crypto rich dad. And so I guess that's a very roundabout way of saying that in this market, you're going to feel like one and the other. But it's really up to you to decide if you're going to stay poor dad forever, or you're going to hold on until you become the rich dad. Right? And that's going to have to do with your ability to not just pick good projects, but also to hold through this bear market.
I'd like to add a little bit to that, Jay. I think that the rich dad analogy of Charlie and Miguel, that's a pretty good one. The folks who are rich, folks who are wealthy, they've got an excess of all of the things in life that are like, things that we would consider valuable, whether it's they have access to their time, they have access to their health, they have access to like monetary resources, they have access to like where they spend their attention, they have like a high amount of like network, all these things that we consider valuable. I would say that folks in the crypto world, their focus is probably a little bit more on the money side, but once you have more of like the money fiat resources version of value, whether you would consider it to be crypto or US dollars or yen or whatever, once you start having more access to that, then you're able to then start unlocking more of your time. Kind of like what Nate was saying earlier, actually, where like, you know, once he gets enough money printers going, then he's able to start doing what he wants to with his life. You know, we've all only got about 30,000 days of life, or something around 2 billion seconds, something like that. Like that's all that you get on planet Earth, you know, when you round it all out and average it up and stuff. So once you no longer have to worry about your survival, like, you know, acquiring resources and trading those for, you know, things that you need in order to keep your body fueled, keep your car going, whatever the heck, right? Once you no longer have to worry about resource acquisition, then you can start doing the things in life that give you purpose. And I think that the folks that are able to find their purpose and then have the time enough to use it, those are what the rich folks in crypto look like. That's what the rich dads look like. And then I'm gonna do a slight definition change here. I'm gonna go get all pedantic or semantic or whatever the word is. But when we're talking about the poor dads, there's a difference between being poor and being broke, right? Being broke is a state of wallet, and being poor is a state of mind, right? So it's okay to be broke. You can be broke for a while and you can not have money, as long as you're not of the state of mind where it's like when you start relaxing and start stagnating and start giving up and following the rules and doing all the things that everyone does in the middle of the bell curve, where it's just like, I'm just going to go along to get along. I'm just going to do the normal everyday average stuff, right? If you do all the normal everyday average stuff, then you're going to be poor. You're not going to succeed. You're not going to grow. You're not going to thrive. It's kind of like the saying that we have, and that Charlie and Miguel talk about, where like everything in life is a Ponzi. Everything must be growing at all times. The people that aren't growing, the people that aren't constantly becoming wealthier, those are the people that become poor, right? You don't want to be poor. It's okay to be broke, just as long as you're not broke forever, right? That's the difference between the rich dads and the poor dads in the crypto sphere.
True. I even have a little bit of a story to share on this one. Like Jay mentioned, the rich dad and the poor dad in crypto. I met a rich dad. His name was Billy Woe. He's involved in many blockchain projects, and I bumped into him one night in a casino as I was at the crypto mindset course. And then the poor dad in this case was me. This guy literally has launched numerous blockchains, is involved in tons of projects, drives a sick Rolls Royce. And then as I was sitting at the valet with him, he literally asked me, so what do you do in crypto? Please tell me you don't just hold coins. And I was like, I kind of just buy and hold the coins. And it was this like surreal moment at like 2 a.m. It's like this dude I stumbled into, who just happens to be like the crypto rich dad, looks at me and goes, "You are stupid." And I said, "Please, sir, tell me why." Like, that was just a surreal moment for me. So it's like Jay said, right now we might be the poor dad in crypto, but as long as you keep your eyes focused on trying to become the rich dad, I think that's what's going to count. Money printers, get involved in projects, maybe be on a validator, yield farming. A lot of this stuff is the opportunity. I kind of relate it back to the whole asset conversation, which is that assets appreciate. Buying and holding will do that. Assets produce income. Buying and holding might not do that unless you yield farm, make the money printers, or start validating or something. And then once you find that combination, I think that's really important.
I want to know what it was that he told you.
Yes, that's what I was gonna ask. Like, so when he said you were dumb for just buying and holding, you gotta elaborate a little bit more on one, why he said that, and two, what did he suggest you do to mitigate your dumbness?
Well, one of the things he said was learn as much as you can and try to get involved with people. I don't know a ton about him. I've tried to do a little bit of research. He actually runs a course if you want to learn about running nodes on blockchains. So there's being a validator, mining, and then there's also running nodes. Running a node is basically like running one of the original computers that validates blockchains. If you can get in early on some of those projects, it can be very, very lucrative. However, in order to do that, sometimes you have to know people or be like really, really hot off the start. And then again, this kind of comes back to a weird thing for me, which is when it comes to the opportunity trifecta, I listen to the advice that he's giving me. And for some of it, I just don't have enough capital to do some of the ideas that he has. Versus once you've been around the block a few times, once you got that bag up a little bit, and you can actually start making some larger plays, that's when you can start getting into it. So hopefully my goal is I would like to, within this next cycle, get to the point where I can feasibly start looking at getting into projects on ground levels, maybe becoming a validator and being a node verifier on some blockchains and whatnot, and then hopefully use that as a money printer. But
Is that
unfortunately, I didn't get all the answers from the guru, which I'm super bummed about. But I will say he's a cool dude, and he
he
legit.
did give you all the answers, bro. He totally did. You know what he fucking told you? He told you the same thing that we've been talking about earlier in the podcast. He told you do shit and learn shit, right? So he's not going to give you like the exact, 10 steps to fix your life, solve the program, blah, blah, blah. He said, do stuff and learn stuff, which is like literally what Nate and I and Jay were talking about earlier. He's like, that is the best advice, because that's the thing that most people are not doing. Are those two things right there? Do stuff and learn stuff. Doesn't matter like what the steps, what the technical steps are in between there. If you want to learn how to run a marathon and then you go and do it, fantastic, great. If you want to learn how to change a tire and then you do it, excellent, outstanding, right? Or if you want to learn how to do the node stuff. By the way, what was the dude's name again? And what is the name of his course? For the node stuff.
The man, his full name is Billy Womack, but you can find him on Instagram at Billy Wo, BILLWO. Like I mentioned previously, he's actually very close to some of the founders of Gala, and he's actively involved in a lot of other chains. Crap, I can't remember what the name of the last project he talked to us about. I have it somewhere in my notes. I'll find it and I'll put it in the Telegram chat. So
here's another little thing there, right? So I'm going to harp on it again. Not like I'm going to sort of kind of congratulate us right here, because what we're doing is we are doing something, even though it's not like that. We're not doing crazy blockchain stuff. We're having conversations on the internet about a thing that we just learned about, right? So we are taking steps, whether you want to consider it valuable or not. We're literally talking to each other about cryptos things, and we're providing entertainment and value and whatever to an audience after we went out and learned stuff. We all met through school, right? We all met in high school back at the crypto mindset course, right? And then we graduated, and now here we are out in the real world flipping hamburgers together on stream, right? So it's like this is kind of a tantamount of, this is the stuff that you do to like go out and learn stuff, find people that are also learning, and then find like I don't remember how many people were in the CMC when we all got together. I want to say it was 800 people in that CMC chat, right? And there's 20 of us originally in the Citadel Degen group, or the crypto Citadel community, whatever the heck we called ourselves at the time. It wasn't Charlie Miguel's Citadel, but it was something degenerate, whatever. And then of that little community, we're all talking, and it's like, hey, we have time to stream, we have time to talk, we have, maybe somebody wants to listen to us run our mouths about some dumbass shit, right? And so then we got together and we created this Degen Roundtable, right? So we learned some stuff, and now we're doing stuff, and here we are, right? So not only are we buyer holders, but go ahead, Jay. Sorry.
You also have to consider the fact that the reason why we're doing is, and I want to remind for those who may have not read the book, or it's been a while since you've read it, Robert also talks about how when you're investing in something, make sure that the asset class that you're investing in is something that you love and something that you're going to pay attention to, right? And that's exactly what this space is for us, right? It's an investment vehicle that we absolutely love, and so it forces us to pay attention. Now, obviously, I wasn't there when Will was having that conversation with Zenith, right? Or his name is Billy Wo, he said? Yeah, so Billy I wasn't there. So I'm like, I'm not going to make a value judgment on him just because of that small little conversation that he had with Zenith. But I think I'm assuming that what he meant was that don't just buy and hold and that's it, right? I think what he's wanting you to do is what Will was talking about. He wants you to be proactive in the community, right? In the same way that Robert was, right? The reason why Robert is successful with real estate is because he loves it, right? He likes looking at houses. He likes evaluating them. He likes doing the cost analysis, right? It's something that he's heavily involved in. And so not only is he buying and holding in some cases, right, waiting for the asset to appreciate, and I'm sure a lot of the guys watching us and a lot of people in this space they just buy and hold, but because he's interested in the asset class, he's actively researching it, right? And so he's always got his fingers on the pulse of that market. And that's exactly what you have to be also in crypto, because you could just buy and hold Bitcoin and Ethereum and you might experience some success. But if you just completely check out, and I'm sure some of us know people who just checked out of the market and missed everything, right? That's the kind of person that you don't want to be, right? So you can buy and hold, but for God's sakes, pay attention to the market, man. So
Absolutely. One of the things that Richard talks about in the book as well is that he loves real estate. If you ask that man about real estate, his eyes light up. It's fantastic. However, one of the things he talks about is that people were like, oh, owning property, I'm not interested in changing toilets for tenants. And he looks at those people and he says, you think I am? I don't care about the hard work. I'm passionate about the results. And that makes him willing to do the hard work. So I think it's one thing to keep in mind, which is that putting in the hours, putting in the effort, it's not glamorous. It's not beautiful. Sometimes you do get to research the SBF trial and they have very salacious things to say, and that is fun. But a lot of times it's staring at charts. It's trying to figure out Elliott wave theory, and you realize this is not an audiobook. I have to actually read this. Painful, by the way, but good. And then it's understanding that you're passionate about the results. Have the vision, see where you want to go, get there. Don't let the little stuff get in your way. That's all I got to say on that.
Everybody sees overnight success, right? That's it. They don't see the work that went into it. You guys ever heard of that story about that one Japanese tree? Right? For like decades, it's this small bud. But what people don't see is the root system that's like 20 feet deep into the ground. Right? Everybody just sees the overnight success. Don't be that person. Know that the people who are hyper successful, there's a lot of work that went in between the time they're hyper successful and when they were broke, poor, and like living in a double wide somewhere, or couch surfing in their like their best friend's house or something like that. So Nate, go ahead, brother.
You're 100% correct about that. Think about this. Come 2025, right? We made a couple $1 million. Okay. Cool. Okay, what is everybody going to be around you? What are they going to be saying? Wow, you got lucky. Did I really? There's a few of us in the chat right now, in our Telegram chat, who are, I want to throw a chair through a wall, right? Because everything just keeps going lower. When is this going to start? And you start getting that feeling of like, I just can't really do this anymore, right? I don't have any money. I'm not getting more money. I personally, I've thrown in somewhere between 10,000, 15,000. I actually want to legitimately go through my statements since I started throwing money in and figure out exactly how much I've actually thrown into the market and then see how far down I am. But see, here's the thing. I don't care about that. Remember, in a bear, it's all about how many coins do you have, not how many dollars are they worth, right? And so like for me, I'm sitting here at like 26 million pulse right now, and I'm like, damn it, I need at least 70,000 or 70 million to feel like I've got enough. So I'm about to throw a very large DCA in and able to get that bag to the point where I want it, right? I'm working hard for that. I want to do that. I'm looking at the amount of coins. I'm not looking at, this is, down to $500 or whatever, right? Imagine what happens when we hit the top of that bowl. Right. And all of a sudden now we switch from, hey, look how many coins I've got, to look how much money I got. Look how many dollars I've got. That's when it's fun. Okay. But you got to remember, guys, you need to keep your eye on the amount of coins, not the amount of dollars. You remember that one guy? This was only a couple of days ago. Because he's like, hey, I'm looking for the price in my Hex ecosystem coins, and I can't find the price. And my first reaction was like, don't do that. Don't do that. You don't want to do that. You want to focus on the amount of coins you've got, And I think Brendan was the one who helped him out ultimately, but I almost got in there and was just like, don't do it.
For sure. Real quick shout out to Crypto Sloth for popping in the chat. Want to say a big thank you for coming on as one of the guest streams. It was a fantastic one. If you have not seen it, go check out the replay. But to keep going on this topic, I think one of the things is to continue on the feeling of the bear market, which sucks, by the way. Yes, this isn't the not fun part, but this is the important part. One of the traps that I keep having to kick myself out of mentally is I think about crypto and I just keep kicking myself for, why didn't I get in earlier? Why didn't I find out in 2017? Why didn't I find out in 2013? Yeah, sure, we all heard of Bitcoin, but none of us actually took the action to learn about it and pull the trigger. It is very easy to think about all those gains in the past and get discouraged. And you just got to remind yourself that you are looking at the tops of those cycles. There are also bottoms of those cycles that you are also looking at as your starting measuring point. We are in that starting measuring point. It doesn't feel good, but it's important.
Something also to think about whenever you get those little feelings of regret or those feelings of like, oh man, I should have done this, I should have done that, blah, 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 right? Hindsight, the whole hindsight 2020 thing, I would heavily recommend people don't put any of your attention into shoulda, coulda, woulda, didn't, all of that stuff. Like the past is the past, it's done, it's over with. The only thing that you can extract of value from the past is the lesson that's like gonna dictate your future actions, right? Try not to cast these negative spells on yourself where you just like, oh man, I should have done this, or oh, I could have done that. Like whether it's, your brother dies in a car accident or a fire, or you could have invented or could have invested in cryptocurrency, or this, that, or the other thing. Don't dwell on the past any further than looking at the lesson that it might teach you very painfully. Like learn it and then let it go. Stop thinking about it. Like let it fade to the wayside. Don't beat yourself up constantly over all the things that like, I could have done this better, or I could have done that better. If you live in the past too long, then you're gonna miss out on the present, and you're gonna be blind to potential things that are happening in the future. Right. So don't cast negative spells on yourselves. Don't get in like a negative headspace. Always think positively. Always look for the silver linings, things of that nature. Try and avoid these lines of thinking, because again, it'll cloud your judgment and it'll lead you down paths that will ultimately hinder your ability to move forward and be successul.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I actually got to add on to that, just a little bit of a personal story. I myself, I got a little bit depressed when I was reading the book, because one of the most important things that he was talking about is how he went to a job, not necessarily for a paycheck, but to learn, right? And I took that to heart originally when I read the book, and I was like, okay, so where's the first place I'm going to go? I want to learn systems, McDonald's. And I went and worked for McDonald's, and wow, they got a hell of a system there. But somewhere along the way, I completely lost that and started literally jumping from workplace to workplace to workplace. Number one, trying to get into management. Number two, trying to get higher paychecks. And I spent probably a good 5 years trying to do that. And it wasn't until just, what was it, about 2 years ago now, around this time, 2 years ago, that I was like, I can't do it anymore. And I realized just how dumb I was being. And in going through this book again, I was like, wow, I already had that mindset, and then I lost it. I lost it and wasted so many years. And I got kind of depressed over, like, where would I be if I continued that, But hey, it is what it is. Move forward. Look where we're at right now, right? Well, I mean, Jay, look where we're at right now. We're doing this whole stream and everything. I mean, Zenith, look, you're doing something now. You're doing something now, right? You took his advice.
Yeah, I hunted down a shirtless guy in a pool named Will and asked him if he wanted to hang out. That's how this started. I'm just saying.
Fucking A, you're right, dude. Oh, man. Yeah, I remember that. I was very, very drunk, but I remember that. God damn.
Hey,
All right,
those of you who...
I want to bring up Sloth's comment here, because that actually, I think,
oh yeah, he just dropped a bomb on everybody. This is the nugget of wisdom right here.
We'll get to you soon, Cassie. No worries.
Yeah. He says,
yeah, sorry, we know you're waiting.
Gotten in early because it worked out, but those who got in early didn't have that guarantee. So you also have to realize the fact that those who got in really early on Bitcoin, like Sloth said, right, there was a significant amount of risk that they were taking. Robert talked about this in the book too, right? It's like you have the first mover advantage, right? And so you might be bummed that you missed out on Bitcoin, you missed out on Ethereum, you missed out on Hex when it was first released in 2019, you missed out on the 10,000 on that 10,000x, right? But you also have to consider the fact that given, like, you have to look at crypto within the context of the entire financial ecosystem, right? And when you look at it, we're just shy, like what? We're just a bit over $100 trillion in market cap. And you compare that to the rest of the financial ecosystem, that's not even a drop in the fucking ocean. Okay, so if you're in this market now, you are still in early, right? And yes, you might have missed out on 2019 Hex. You might have missed out on Bitcoin when it was pennies. You might have missed out on $80 Ethereum. But there are so many projects that are going to be coming out within the next year or so that are going to give you those same kind of opportunities. One of them we're invested in right now, and I'm sure a lot of you know Pulse Chain, right? That's another vehicle right there that has the potential to do all of those things, right? And so don't be bummed about missing out on what already happened, right? Like Will said, focus on the opportunities that are going to come your way now, because they are going to come. There's going to be a lot of them. Your responsibility is to identify the opportunity and to take it when it comes your way. Okay, don't be paralyzed by fear of inaction, because then if you let that happen to you, next year you're going to be regretting the exact same things, right? So don't let. And
I'm telling you right now, like where you're at right now, all that bad feeling with the Bears, I use that to be like, oh, I need to buy more crypto.
Dude,
True.
you know what I realized reading Rich Dad Poor Dad? I realized that Robert Kiyosaki is a fucking degenerate. So you know how we obviously know he likes real estate, right? You know what his other favorite investment vehicle is? You guys remember? He says small cap stocks. What does that remind you of, guys?
Oh my gosh, crypto.
Are you telling me Robert Kiyosaki is the original Wolf of Wall Street?
Yo, small cap altcoins, right? So I was like, wow, this guy is a degenerate. He was just a degenerate in a different investment vehicle. I just thought that was fucking hilarious, man.
Wait, so when are we gonna get him on the show then? If he's a fellow degenerate.
Dude, I tagged him in all the promo materials, so I'll try to reach out. Although he has his messages turned off on Twitter, so I couldn't slide into his DMs, unfortunately. All right, we said we were gonna do it. We promised it. Mrs. McGettit, please have the final word on the topic of the bad bear market feels and sticking it out in crypto. What you got for us?
Okay, I just wanted to say, for anybody who comes into it and you're feeling bad because you missed out, don't. Remember all those stories that we've all heard. The guy who traded 1,000 Bitcoins for pizza. There was a story I heard. I'm not sure if this one is true because I didn't look into it, but there was a story I heard about a football player who decided to get paid in Bitcoin when Bitcoin was at 60K per coin. He got paid like $2.4 million. Bitcoin died for that little tiny, that little bit where it just dumped. And by the end of it all, after he paid his taxes, he lost money. His entire year's commission, he lost money because Bitcoin dropped so hard at that point in time. So he took it at the highest point it's ever been at. And then that happened to him. So don't worry about those missed opportunities because just, all of us have been there. All of us have had that. We've all regretted not buying this or that or getting into this coin early enough. Or, like Doge. I'm sure there are a lot of us who can say, oh, well, why didn't I buy that? Well, it seemed like a joke at the time. Ended up doing really well. A lot of people made some good money. That's always going to happen. Crypto is the baby of investments right now. It is still in such a small phase at the moment. I think it's 4% of people have anything in crypto. So there's going to be a lot more opportunities. Like whatever you've missed, you'll get that back tenfold. You will find them. It will happen. All you got to do is dip your feet in and don't give up.
Well said.
Oh, and
man.
one thing I
Could
did
not
want to
have done it
mention,
better. Go for it.
Something that you had asked us about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like in a crypto sense. I wanted to just briefly say that I think that if that was, let's say that this whole story of this book was happening today and it was centered on crypto, I would say that what you said earlier, Zenith, and a lot of you have actually touched on it. Poor Dad would be basically what we're all doing, buying, or actually, no. It's the people who buy Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then they just sit there and they just look at it and they just wait. Those would be our poor dads. And our rich dad would be the people who are like, let me throw $100 at everything I see. It very much, for me, boils down to the volatility of the risks that you're willing to take. So that would be a big part of I think would be the main differences in the rich dad versus the poor dad if they were doing what we're all doing right now.
You see, before we got to that point, right, I was actually going to say that our Poor Dad was more like a BlackRock, where everything needs to be very safe before they take a step into it, right? And then they're doing it with a very small allocation. Whereas the Rich Dad would be more kind of like a Richard Hart, who goes full into it, starts creating things, and starts trying to teach everybody else, hey, here's how you can do stuff and go out and get something done. And if you think about it, in Pulse Chain, that's what's happening right now. I mean, he created Hex, he helped grow it, and now we have Pulse Chain. And what's happening? He's taking a step back. He's basically being a Satoshi at this point. And now we, the community, are taking care of everything. We had this talk with RG about this, RG3, and the captain, he talked about how we don't need Richard Hart anymore as a community in Hexaco, right? We're all good to go. We're building our own stuff. And so I would say that would be the Rich Dad.
Yeah, maybe this is what Richard meant when he said he wanted to build Hexaco, is maybe not an actual island, but just a community of people that go out and do their own things. And like, he just basically started it, got it its forward momentum, and then from there, perhaps he takes a step back. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to step out. I'm reaching a time constraint for a place that I have to be very near. It's Case and Bucks off of Interstate 55, and they're about to stop serving food. So that being said, this has been a fantastic conversation. You guys keep doing your thing. I'll be in the chats and stuff, lurking and whatnot, but I will see you all later.
Good to see you, Will. Thanks for the input, brother. And we will catch you on Sunday.
Yes, sir. I'll be there.
Excellent.
Adios.
Alrighty. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the part of the show where my script is officially done, and we're absolutely thrilled to open it up to you guys. If you have any thoughts, comments, concerns about the book, anything crypto or Robert Kiyosaki, please throw it in the comments. We'll read it and get going on that. And then for now, I'm going to turn it over to the panel. I know we had a good conversation on taxes earlier. If you guys want to keep that going, hit me with some knowledge.
No, it's just being able to realize that the reason why Robert says that the rich never pay taxes is because, like Nate was alluding to earlier, there's a lot of things in place that the government uses to incentivize people who are wealthy to keep producing, because they produce goods and services like houses, right, and other different types of products, right? And so for the government to incentivize those people to keep creating, they give them a lot of tax breaks. That's why it always surprises me, right, when you have some people who continually say that the rich never do enough. I'm like, guys, you realize that a lot of the innovation and a lot of the goods and products and services that make your life here in the West extremely comfortable, they are produced by those people who you have this disdain towards, right? And if those people didn't exist, you wouldn't have your iPhones, you wouldn't have your computers, you wouldn't have your internets, right? I think one of the things that people need to realize is that those people are paid in proportion to the problem that they solve, right? That's what Elon Musk said, right? And the unfortunate reality of the world is that not everybody's going to have Elon Musk level talent, but that doesn't mean you're not going to be able to accrue that kind of wealth. What have we been speaking about this whole podcast? You have to be able to identify opportunity that lies in front of you, because you might not be a genius level rocket scientist like Elon Musk, but you have an asset class like cryptocurrency that you can invest in, that you could use in order to get yourself out of the rat race, right? To use Robert's language. And so you just have to be able to identify that opportunity so that one day you can be in the class of people that takes advantage of the tax benefits instead of complaining about it all the time.
Dude, sure. I can't tell you how many times that I cringe horribly whenever I'm hearing anybody talking about especially during an election cycle, right? Where it's like, oh, yeah, no, we need to tax the rich. I'm going to put an extra amount of percentages on taxing. And I'm like, the entire time I'm sitting here being like, that tax percentage is going on you. Why are you so stupid? Oh my gosh, it pisses me off, dude, because number one, anybody who doesn't pay their taxes because they get tax breaks, they're useful to society. You're not useful and the more taxes you pay, I would say you're less useful to society and the community. You're not building anything. You're not helping people with jobs and things like that, right? You're not doing any of that. You're simply going to do a job and then taxes take it out. And believe me, I feel the burn every single time and I don't want it. But at the same time, it's like it annoys the hell out of me because, like, think about it this way: there are things that even poor people can avoid taxes with. You know what that's called? Donating. You don't have to donate money. You can go ahead and donate clothing. You can go donate your time. Go work at like some sort of shelter or whatever, right? What do you call that? Hunger for Humanity or something like that. That right there is a tax write-off. These tax write-offs are they're not tax write-offs. They are, how useful were you to as a human being to the world? And oh my gosh, it makes me so mad when people are sitting there saying, hey, we need to, the rich need to pay their share in taxes. No. Yeah, so vote in the guy who's going to raise taxes. No, don't do that. What's going to end up happening is that they're just going to be raising the taxes on the middle class because the middle class has the most amount of money while doing the least for society. Why? Because they are literally only workers. That's what they are. And this is the reason why this whole like poor people, they just don't really, spend enough. And so you get this whole thing where it's like rich people, poor people. Where's the middle ground? Oh, thanks to poor people and this middle ground saying we need to tax up here, they're just taxing themselves. And so then they're disappearing and they're coming down here like this. And now we got these guys still going like that, right? It's so dumb. I really hate it when people are just so unbelievably ignorant when it comes to taxes. Like, like I myself, like I go to a professional to help with it. I'm not exactly the smartest when it comes to taxes and all that, but I know, and I boiled it down to a very simple, hey, as long as I'm being useful in society and helping people, I'm going to pay less in taxes, even as a brokey myself, So, I mean, come on, people. Like, what's the Pepsi thing? Wake up, people, right?
Yeah. I think taxes is one of those areas that is criminally misunderstood and feared irrationally. Yes, the tax code is massive, confusing. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense in areas. A lot of tax professionals really reap benefits by understanding the gray area and understanding how you can qualify things to be things that are not explicitly written in the tax code. For example, there was a high dollar real estate agent who actually ended up writing off a yacht as a tax expense because she used it as a business expense to show people waterfront properties from the waterfront. Was it used for personal use? No, not really. It was a business expense used as a business expense. However, a yacht's a hell of a business item to use. I'd argue it's a pretty good time. So with that said, this might be a half-baked thought, but unfortunately, like Nate was saying, the government does punish the average person just for earning a wage, getting taxed, and then having their money returned to them after the government has taken their share. One way you could think about it, though, is that does it disincentivize normal people to make more money in a wage job? Yes. However, the inverse could also be true, which is that it is encouraging you to make money in ways that you are business owners and you can find tax advantages to reduce your tax burden. The idea, what I mean behind this is that you, as a business owner, like Robert talks about, is that you get your money in first, you pay your business, and then you get taxed on profits. Profits is everything that comes out after your expenses, after paying your staff, after paying yourself a little bit too, by the way. And at that point, that's when you pay taxes. That means your tax burden is going to be a lot less. So it's on you as the entrepreneur to figure out the ways that you can spend as much money on your business to improve the business and the future of the business, which in turn is going to make you more money. And that's how you reduce your taxes. So go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that exactly what you said right there. So Robert himself was even saying, hey, we have a meeting. We have a business meeting in this exotic location, and basically it's a tax write-off when it's really a vacation, right? You have a company vehicle. It just happens to be a Ferrari, and the reason for that is because, it draws attention to your company, even though it's your Ferrari. What is it that truly separates the rich from the poor? aside from a lot of different things. But in this particular instance, yeah, right. But in this particular instance, there's something called you own nothing and you're happy because you still have control over it, and you have no power, but you still own everything, but somebody else has control over it. And so this is where the whole corporation deal comes in, where I almost want to say it's like a shield, right? You got the corporation, it's a shield. All these things come at you. It doesn't really matter. You know, anybody who's like trying to sue you, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Who was it just recently who he got out of, I think it was a soccer player. He just recently got out of a I think.
Are you talking about the guy that got divorced and then his
dude?
I can't remember the name, but the story is that his ex-wife tried suing him for alimony, and she didn't realize that the dude kept all of his stuff in his parents' name.
His mom's
and
name,
basically just like gave it to his parents. So they're like, "All right, we're gonna come after you," and you're like, "Wow, you have nothing."
Nothing. And the most it's so funny that's probably one of the best examples for like dumbed down versions of what a corporation does for you, or like multiple corporations. It literally is like, as soon as anybody, or including the government, is trying to get what you have, right? Taxes. You don't pay them because you've already spent all the money through the corporations, and all of a sudden then it's like, Uncle Sam's like, and you're like, oh, sorry, I spent it all. I don't have anything. Oops. I love it, man. It's great.
Yeah, man. You just have to identify ways that you as an entrepreneur can use the tax code to your advantage, right? Because that's what it's there for. And look, you should use it. You should use it 100% to your advantage, because as like most entrepreneurs are small business owners, right? And so you're providing a product or service that's probably going to be valuable to some people. So, and maybe if you're good enough at what you're doing, you're able to provide that value to a whole bunch of people. And so because you're improving people's lives, you should be able to keep as much of your income as possible, right? So that means you deduct your workspace, you deduct your expenses, you deduct your overhead, you deduct your company vehicle, you deduct your company dinners. All that stuff should be reducing your tax burden, because you're providing a service that other people find valuable, right? That's what I don't think people understand. The only thing that they see is this person makes X amount of money and they need to be given that away. Like, no, they should be able to keep as much as they can because they're providing something valuable to society, right? That's why I really like what Richard does, right? You know how I know a lot of people in my church who are extremely wealthy, but they are truly altruistic in the sense that they are silent when they donate. I think that's fantastic, but I love what Richard does, because he says, I donated millions of dollars for longevity research so that you could live longer. What have you done for charity? And the answer for most people is you've done nothing. You've given back zero. And so it's like, I know people bag on Richard because he's like, nah, man, you should be silent about the good that you're doing for the world. I'm like, no, because people are going to cast stones at you anyway. And you know what happens when you're silent about it? The unfortunate reality is the people who are loudest, that's who others are being exposed to. So other people are going to believe that, like Robert talked about, right? That Robin Hood story, right? That you're actually doing something good by robbing the rich of their money. It's like, no, man, that's not what you're doing. What you're doing is you're taking money away from people who would probably use that money in ways that would be better than the government will be using it.
Oh, for sure.
Well, you're robbing the poor, technically.
Exactly.
You're robbing the middle class.
Exactly. So it's like, I was having a conversation about this with my roommate, right? I was like, and I was talking to him about Richard Hart. I was like, when I become a fucking multimillionaire and I'm doing a lot of this, like I'm doing a lot of good stuff for other people, and other folks are gonna start like throwing stones at my house, I'm gonna be like, I created the shelter for homeless dogs. What have you done today? Oh, nothing.
Yeah, cocky Richard Hart is funny, but he does have good points, which is that, is he flexing how much stuff he does? Yes, but it doesn't change the fact that he did it. So there's that. I got to say, though, when it comes to people not understanding taxes, though, my favorite tax topic to talk about, though, is capital gains tax. And I think that capital gains is also one of the very fundamentally misunderstood things. Like when you're talking about people saying like you need to tax the rich more, they always point to like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. They look at net worth, which is horribly calculated by people that don't actually have the correct numbers. But what they're also looking at is they're looking at like stock and their ownership of companies, which sure, it might be worth that today, but when they created it, you didn't see all the money that they poured into it. And there's that massive exponential gain from the bottom to the top. Sure, they're worth that much, but they haven't realized gains, which means they don't physically have that money. Like, just because Elon and Bezos are worth that much doesn't mean that they can literally go get $1 billion in money and then just go put it in a pool and go Scrooge McDuck in it. It's realizing capital gains. And when it comes to the crypto world, this is one of the things that I think our tax laws could honestly improve on. I know Miguel DCC has talked about the idea is that the system currently is that anytime you make a swap between coins, it's technically a taxable event. But what would really be the way to do it is that you have the taxable event when you go from coins to cash. That'd be a great way to do it, because at that point, you're not trying to like calculate all the small minutia. You're literally just looking at the net in, net out. It's a clean break. But I mean, as far as trying to maximize your own capital gains, this is something I'll throw out to people, is that understand the difference between short-term and long-term investments. Any investment that you hold for longer than a year is taxed on the long-term schedule instead of the short-term schedule. The short-term schedule can go up to about 35% capital gains tax. Meanwhile, the long-term one is only 20%. And if you can find even better tax havens like Puerto Rico or Portugal, allegedly, they'll even offer you things like zero capital gains tax. Sure, they might have other taxes that you have to pay, or there's other like prices for living in those areas. But if you're looking at capital gains, that's one way to do it.
Yeah, I was gonna put the caveat there: United States, for that.
We'll keep beating this drum. USA is the best country. There's no better place to be than right here, right now.
Yeah, it definitely is. I would agree with that. I still want to get out of the United States, but that's for other reasons. I've got other things that I want to go do, right? But yeah, United States, it's the capital gains tax overall. It depends on which state you're in. Obviously, it kind of changes a little bit, but the overall is like anywhere from 35 to 40%. If it's under a year, right? Capital gains tax. And then after a year or a year and a half, or no, it's 2 years with some states, but it's going to be 20%, which annoys the crap out of me, because I start thinking to myself, hey, let's go ahead and say, I swapped around to $1 million. Okay, cool. How much is 20% of that? That's like $200,000.
A lot.
I have never seen, until just recently. I'm so poor. My family has been so poor that I've never seen or heard of $10,000 in the bank account. I've recently changed that because, thanks, Robert Kiyosaki. But before then, I've never seen that. And to think of the idea, for me, where I'm at, right? To think of the idea of just handing over $200,000 as like, oh, here you go, it's taxes now. That blows my mind,
Yeah, I would say that if you're worried about how much money you're going to be paying in taxes, that's probably a good worry to have, man, because it probably means that you made a lot of money during the bull market. So, like, don't stress over it too much, right? Just make sure that you don't liquidate everything all at once. Let some of those assets appreciate for a year or longer so that your tax liability is a little bit longer. But hey, man, if you're worried about having to pay $100,000 in taxes when you exit in 2025, that's a good problem to have, man. So don't stress over it too much, bro. And then
good problem to have.
And then read Rich Dad Poor Dad so that you can have a good idea of where you can funnel some of that capital into assets that will not be taxed the same way that crypto will be when you take a profit, right? So to kind of close this off, for those of you who are interested in reading the book, Robert has a lot of notes at the end on further reading that actually go into detail about all of these different avenues that we talked about today in particular, like, for example, learning about taxes, right, and learning about different vehicles in order to shelter your money from taking significant from like just basically reducing your tax liabilities, right? He has a lot of recommendations at the very end of the book for further reading. So I highly recommend that if you have not already done so, please go ahead and pick up a copy of Robert's Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's available both in physical and audiobook. It's like $10. One of the best $10 you'll ever spend in your entire life.
True. With that said, our final story, talking about Rich Dad Poor Dad, is brought up by our very own Mrs. McGettit, and I'll go ahead and go into it. Early on in the book, Robert Kiyosaki and his buddy are working for his friend's dad in the supermarket, and this is early on in their career after they realize that fake printing money is not viable. They're looking for opportunities to have their own businesses. Work in the supermarket's not glamorous. However, one day they did realize that all of the old comics and magazines were just getting thrown out. So this is where they had their first business idea, which was, I want to read those. These are getting thrown out. How can I use this? What if we create our own comic book and magazine library and then just charge people a small entrance fee? They can come, read as many as they want, and then that's it. And it's a simple idea like that that is just the perfect starting point for getting going. It's something small, but it's something tangible. It's that nugget that you can latch onto and scale. I think it's one of the things that we look at when we're doing the YouTube channel here is, sure, are we live streaming to not a whole lot of folks sometimes? Sure. Does it bother us? No. We're learning. We're cutting our teeth. But at the same time, it's laying the foundation, it's taking the baby steps, and it's stacking small victories. So, Mrs. McGettit, any final points on our favorite comic book story?
Just before that, I want to go ahead and point out just how important that actually was and how cool it was that they were freaking 9 years old and they came up with that. That's insane. Literally.
What were you doing when you were 9? Huh?
Yeah, I don't even know.
When I was 9, I was probably eating dirt still. Not gonna lie. But the main reason I wanted to touch on that is I think the takeaway from that story is so important. They went into this whole thing where they were making no money. They started making 10 cents, and then Rich Dad was like, well, no, I'm not gonna pay you guys anything. Figure it out. And they're like, oh, okay, well, thanks, dude. But they did. I mean, that motivated them and opened their eyes to what was going on around them, because when Robert is describing the story, he says, I had never seen her do this. Well, actually, I had seen her do this. I just never really paid any attention to it. And then, like, what she was doing was she was getting rid of the comic books, basically. And that's where the whole idea started from, just opening your eyes. And that's one of the big deals, that you stop doing that when you're working that 9 to 5 and you just get into the rhythm of just you getting your paycheck and, you're living your life and you're in the rat race and et cetera. You don't open your eyes anymore. You don't have that same kind of creativity going through you. You don't have that same, like, I guess, encouragement to find these situations. So that's one thing that I really want to say for our viewers here. Don't be blind. Keep your eyes open. You never know what's going to happen. And another very brief kind of story. I'm sure you guys have all heard of KFC. The guy who originally started that business, KFC didn't open until he was like in his 70s.
Yeah.
He tried for his whole life. That guy went around and tried, and I don't think I've ever heard of a guy having such bad luck. One of his restaurants, I think it was in like a hotel, it burned to the ground. Like, he was doing fine, and then the place literally burned down. Like, how much more can, like, God himself be being like, nah, dude, you're gonna be poor forever? But he never gave up. So always chase that. Always remember that. Like, you can do it, and it doesn't matter how old you are. Just keep your brain open and see what's going on. Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring up that story, because I just think it's really important to kind of take that lesson.
No, it's a fantastic one. It's humble origins, and it's a good inspiration for everybody. With that said, we are going to start our final wrap up. Ask for any book recommendations. If we see anything coming through, we will throw it out there and make it official tonight. But let's go on. Jay, any final thoughts? Where can people find you? What'd you think?
Oh, I think this was a very fantastic first episode to what I hope will be a mainstay series in our channel. I'm certainly looking forward to whatever book that we decide to discuss next. You could find me as always at _P90Hex on Twitter and agent _J Schroth on Instagram. And you can find me always in our Telegram, which will be linked below in the description. Thanks again, Zenith, for hosting this. This was a absolutely wonderful 2 hours well spent. And also really like to thank those in the chat catching us live and people that are going to catch us on the replay. We know that time is your most valuable asset, and we do appreciate that you spent some of that time here with us today. Until next time, that's all for me, man.
Yeah. This is a really cool idea. The thing that I really like about this, again, Zenith, it's like you're doing something now. You came up with this idea. This was all you, man, and I appreciate you doing this. I think it's a fantastic idea.
Not a problem,
the
brother.
thing-
This beats the hell out of me talking to myself in a corner.
Same. But yeah, the thing that I particularly like about what we're doing here tonight, there's a lot of streams talking about like what's going on in the market and charts and hey, there's a coin here, coin there, and this is kind of what they're doing, but they don't really talk about, and nobody actually in the crypto space is talking about, how do I improve as a human being, right, to be able to live a better life, and then how can I apply that to my investment in crypto? Nobody's doing that, and I really like being able to go through these books that help people actually become from people who have already been through it, right? Learn from the experiences of others, and I like us being able to actually talk about and throw ideas out there, have people literally get improved as we're throwing this information out there, what we personally have done, right? The mistakes that we personally have made, what we learned from them, same thing with the books. I mean, I really like this idea because I think it's something that's needed in the space. I think it's highly needed. But as far as like what's going on, I don't know if you had anything to say to that, Zenith.
No, we're just closing out. Where can people find you,
Okay,
man?
cool. Yeah, cool. So we're actually hey, hop in the chat. Our Telegram chat is so active. There's a lot of help going on there. I mean, Jay even gives these reports and everything. I'm like, what a nerd. He's looking at the charts. Ha 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 ha. I don't know how he does it, man. It's pretty crazy. I know like resistance level. That's true. I know resistance levels. I can kind of tell when things are going to happen. But this guy goes into other things. Jay, I don't know how you go through all of these different indicators. It's your deal, man. You're really good at that. But as far as like what I'm doing, I'm currently deep diving right now into the Earn protocol on Power City. This is going to be a lot like the presentation we did with Walrus in the liquid loans. It's very similar, but there's also an added feature that Power City did as well as with Amplifier. We're also looking at that. There's an entire strategy where you would have like liquid loans and Earn, and you could just have Amplifier infinitely rehypothecate for you. And it's another money printer, very complicated stuff. But I can tell you right now, we're in the process of getting this put together. We're looking to get the guy for Power City, same thing with Walrus, right, onto the show with us, and we're going to be deep diving, talking about it. It's going to be a great show. But we don't have an exact date on when it's coming out, but it's in the process right now. I'll let you guys know. Keep up to date with us because you will not want to miss that. Unless you want to be broke. I mean, if you want to be poor, if you want to be poor, Dad, then go ahead, miss it. Yeah, don't care about it. But if you want to be rich, Dad, you're gonna want to keep up with it.
Beautiful. Well said, Nate. All right. This is McGettit, our very special guest for this episode. Close us out, please. Any final thoughts?
I just wanted to say on that note, we did reach out to the person that Nate just mentioned there, and they did confirm that they're willing to come on with us. So we're going to go ahead and get that figured out. And then, no, that's basically it. Thank you all for joining us tonight. It's always a blast with the rest of the DGens around, and this book club idea has been amazing. It's only uphill from here. Let's keep it up, guys.
Absolutely. I do want to take this a second just to say thank you for doing all the technical support and everything you do behind the scenes. Nobody else sees it, but it is honestly some of the harder work around here, and it's stuff that you don't get appreciated enough for. So thank you again.
Of course, I'm happy to do it.
Excellent. Well, I originally thought the running joke with this whole series is going to be that it's going to be hard to get degens to read, but I threw out this original idea and everybody went wild. So I am super stoked that we have a good group of people that are willing to actually do some reading. I'm going to chew through audiobooks and do the physical reading as well. I prefer it that way, and I've already wrecked my brain at listening everything to 2 times speed, so normal speech sounds slow for me. Anyways, I guess we have to shout out our friend Will Stevenson, who left early. I can't tell if he's eating green eggs and ham at his restaurant or if he wants us to cover it, but I think that might be the next book. So I don't know. Stay tuned. That might be an April Fool's episode that I record or something. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for spending time with us tonight. We are thrilled to be launching this series, and we hope that you enjoy it just as much as we do. We will be back on Sunday night for our usual scheduled programming, and on Wednesday, I will be hosting my second ever show with our special guest, Crypto Coffee. Looking forward to that one. It should be awesome, so look out for it. And again, we have tons of special guests that have come on before. They are all fantastic. I highly recommend you go check out the replay, be part of Replay Gang. With that said, we are going to get out of here, though, so we will catch you people next time. Thank you.